Hi, and welcome to the Cyber Core Skills course, lesson number 2. We're going to be talking about virtualization. And just to cover off a few of the sort of administrative notes with regards to this, I've dumped both within several areas loads of links with availability to download some of the vSphere stuff, VirtualBox, as well as some of the open source materials as well, so that you can build your own after this. I wouldn't advise building it as I speak because it probably won't give you time. So here we go. We're going to split this lesson into 2, so give you a quick overview about the benefits of virtualization, how it's spread through small personal use all the way to enterprise and cloud. We will be talking about cloud a bit further within lesson number 9 of this very long course, it seems. We'll talk about accessing the environment, and then part 2 will be where we get really physical and practical. So we talk about building VMs, hosting them on EXXI servers, connecting on the vSphere client, and then deploying VMs on there, and then building our sort of infrastructure or virtual environment or ranges out. So there we go. As I like to relate everything to qualifications, so this is just a quick overview of the VMware qualifications board. And the one that's sort of most common probably around what we're doing today is the VCA-6 DCV, which is the data center virtualization. So some of the topics we're going to talk about this are going to be housed within that. They go far more specialist, so when you talk about cloud and automation, and then networking virtualization, which is, we'll speak about a little bit about it, about logical switches and things, but you can go on to a far different level when you talk about your rules and allowing and disallowing. I know we've already touched a little bit on network, but when you talk about software defined networks and what these are, it goes into a whole other level. So virtualization as an overview, we can spread it through sort of your own personal use with uses of VirtualBox, VMware. So you've got 3 different types of VMware. You've got Fusion, you've got Player, and you've got Workstation Pro. You've got to pay for Workstation Pro, but if you're using things commercially, you must use Workstation Pro. You can't use a Player. And if you're using Player, it's free and open source. So because this is non-commercial and not making non-profit, so I can use Player, but I'm actually going to use Workstation Pro just because I've got it on a commercial license. It gives you a few more additional facilities. It allows you to install sort of your VM tools a lot easier, and you've also got the inbuilt Hyper-V, which is within every distribution of Microsoft. Surprisingly, not many people use it. You've got full, going from small enterprise through to data centers. That's where we start talking about our EXXI servers and our wider build. And then you've got it onto your cloud providers. So when we talk about the small environments, we talk about like on-prem solutions, so you're on premises. But when we talk about cloud providers, you can have full cloud or hybrid cloud. And then we talk about public cloud, which is, for example, pretty much everybody's used Google Drive, for example. That's public cloud. Or you've got your private cloud, which is AWS, your Azure, or your Google cloud community, which they tend to offer you products and charge as a service. So software as a service, platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service. As I said, we're going to cover these a lot more in our lesson 9 we're going to be going through. Cool. So some basic tools. I might have already mentioned a few. VM Workstation, you've got Workstation and Workstation Pro. Hyper-V, no one uses it, and more open source. VirtualBox, so if you're using VMware on your laptop, normally you'd have a Windows laptop, but because VMware really isn't supported on Mac, if you're using Mac and you want to start virtualizing your own infrastructure, then you're going to have to use VirtualBox. When we talk about enterprise level, we've got EXXI server, vSphere. Then on top of vSphere, we've got vCenter, things like vMotion and NSX. That's the virtualized network. And vMotion provides high availability and redundancy. And that vCenter provides a lot of control over many instances of EXXI server. An open source version of that is EXPNG, next generation. That's pretty good actually myself. Very good GUI interface to use with the web front end. similar to what we're going to be doing with VMware, but we're going to be concentrating on that VMware element really, just because for the on-prem stuff that we're going to be going through and that you can really sort of home and practice on, and what you've got available to you and having an aspect of commercial as well, so build up some good skills. So just provide a quick overview. Why go virtual? So virtualization can really up your utilization of memory compared to what machines. So before 10 servers can go up to 3. Utilization of these is it drastically increased. The annual support has dropped, yet the power has dropped as well. So it's everything is advantage to go onto a virtual environment. So there's less physical, more virtual is good. So just a quick overview of some of the benefits. You get most out of your equipment. So instead of having that 8% utilization we spoke about before over a few VMs, we're really hammering and using what we've got. There may be a requirement to have a higher spec, so instead of 4 cores you might have 8, but you'll have to have increased specs, so the hardware might be a little bit more expensive, but you'll have less of it, and that generally means less single points of failure as well. Portability of VMs, portability of servers and apps, so that's whether it's migration from a local EXI instance to another using vMotion, or even portability, so you can shove it onto a USB and take it somewhere else. If I know for a fact that I've done it as a system manager myself, was we had defective system, and just to prove our virtual machines were working, we removed them all and moved them to another location and booted them up there, and it was exactly the same system, and we proved it in 2 different locations and actually different hardware as well. So you're not just playing with the operating system anymore, so the bare operating system, because it's sort of the provider of VMware provide a platform you can run on. It can be running on a HP to an LG server. So it provides a lot of flexibility with regards to hardware, providing it can support virtualization. Ease of backup for the entire platform, so you can either back up a single server or an entire platform in minutes. And at the end of the day, virtual is just a bunch of files, so you can either back up a data store, which we're going through. You can either back up the individual files to USB, or you can do an entire inventory and then remove that off-site very easily. It's compared to backing up servers how we traditionally did with tapes or sort of high availability redundancy of clients. So reduction of infrastructure, as I've already said, but also internally. So instead of having 5 servers all speaking through a core switch, you can have the 5 servers within an EXI server, so there's no need for any traffic to actually leave that box. So it's actually increasing the speed between the different servers. You can power down and power up a system from one press of a button. So we can see there, that's the screenshot and grab is from vCenter itself, and we can see there the manual startup, but then we can set that to automatic and boot up or shut down within 120 seconds, and it's quite highly configurable. So you can go away, you can shut down an entire system with one right click, shut down, it will shut down the VMs in order, and obviously the domain control last, or however your environment's set up, and then even do the physical, and then all you need to do is turn off the UPS if required. So that's real world advantages of virtualization and what sort of VMware can give us. There's a couple of different types, and I'm going to describe what we're going to be doing at the end. So bare metal is type 1, so that's really when you're focused on performance. So it's like an installed operating system on a real physical box or a server. So when we talk about EXI server, that will be installed on a machine where that's the base operating system. Then on there, that's when we put our virtual machine. So effectively, hardware layer, hypervisor, which is our EXI server, and then our virtual machine sit on top of that through there, which you generally get the most out of your virtual machines, then we'll access it through our vSphere client. What we're going to be doing is using our VMware sort of workstation. So we've got our hardware, which is at the minute is going to be my laptop and a USB hard drive. We've got our OS layer, which is I'm using Windows 11 at the minute. Then on top of that, I'm going to have a hypervisor. Then my virtual machine sit within that. So that's going to be my VM workstation application accessing all the files for me. And at one point I've had a build of 5 EXXI servers, all running at once with a management client, accessing the web interface. Everything was near melting point, but effectively I was still running a hosted Type 2 hypervisor, even though I was running a Type 1. So what I was running was my laptop. The hypervisor was the hypervisor was using VMware Workstation, and then my virtual machine was EXXI server, and then that was running my servers within there. So I was running a Type 2 but with a Type 1 within Type 2, so almost full inception really about how that build, and we'll be seeing that later. Cool. So that'll be a Type 2 with a Type 1 on the Type 2. Cool. So Type 5 really. Cool. Just a few just a sort of clarity of how things are, just in case you have seen how vSphere has come on through time. We've got a XP version in the bottom left, which that was vSphere client itself, a bit of software, and then it extended. They improved the GUI of it. Not much additional features apart from more refined management of the data stores, which we'll be going on to. You can see the sort of initial logon screen there, where you put your IP address in and your username and password for an EXXI server, and we'll be seeing this. I know I'm throwing those at you. One of the reasons why they got rid of these was recently sort of a lot of the Java vulnerabilities that have come out. A lot of VMware softwares have been open to this, so this is one reason why they've gone straight to a web interface and not having a hosted client, because that will give you an attack vector. So now we're using sort of a more web GUI, and we can either access it through the individual EXXI server, which we will be at the minute, or a full vCenter client, which speaks about multiple hosts and multiple VMs. Okay, and through that we can monitor them, turn them on, turn them off, and create virtual machines, which we'll be doing later. Cool. Demo. So I'm going to do a quick vSphere walk around, but I'm going to do it from the point of turning something on and then accessing it. So pardon me dragging things on screen. I'm just going to bring it across my USB cyber range. So if I bring it up to the point of test, listen to EXXI1 and let it boot. Just what I want to do is I'll shut this down. I've already got this running actually. So what I'm going to do is shut this down and then reboot it, restart a guest, just so we can see it booting. So this is our EXXI server. Restart a guest. Okay, it might take a little minute. So what we want to do is see this boot, and it's quite a familiar screen really. So once it starts booting, it becomes very yellow and black. It's the sort of the colours they've gone with for the operating system. So at the minute, me booting this is Type 2 hosted, but we're booting a Type 1 hypervisor. So that I'm using VMware Workstation. I'll do a bit of a demo around that, but I just wanted to jump straight in really as part of the demo and show what the real legs were. So this is VMware EXXI Server version 7, one of the most up-to-date versions, recently downloaded as of this evening, because I had a previous version which had errors on, so I thought I'd rebuild it and give some real saturation of knowledge, so at least we can see what's going on. So this is EXXI Server, so this is what we're going to be storing and processing our virtual machines on, and we're going to access them through a web GUI. So once this is booted, I'm going to quickly jump on there and see the IP address, and then from there access it from a web front, just Chrome effectively. So it shouldn't take too long to boot up. With that, as I said, it requires a little bit more processing power, so I've given this 4 cores, 500 gig of memory, and I'm running it on my 7 laptop anyway, so it should be okay. I've managed to have a lot more on this, so we're good. So I'll just leave this for a second. As you can see, when I've clicked in, there's no mouse. This is pure keyboard action. So we type in our username and password. And we can see here, if you look closely, there's me trying to move the mouse. It's obviously not going to work. We can see we've got our network. So if I just go down to manage network, configure IPv4, so we've got a dynamic IP address there, and it should be 192.168.160.132 potentially. I'm just going to come out of that again, and if we've got no saves, it should jump back. So it's 192.168.160.132, and because of the way this is set up, I've got my VM workstation is set up effectively with this running on a logical switch. So if I just go settings, you can see here network, it's natted, but it should be sat on one segment, nope, advanced. Oh, here it is. You can see it's sat on VMnet 0, so effectively it's sat on the same network, it's just as a subnet on my network. So it can access the external world, but also I can access it directly from my laptop. So I'm just going to quickly bring up Chrome and type in the IP address 192.168. Oh. 192.168.1. What was it again? One 192.168.160.132. Cool, right. And because we've not loaded any certificates on, it's coming up with a certificate error. That's why it's saying it's insecure, because it's HTTP at the minute. Root. So this is the web GUI for my EXXI server that I've built. So what I've already got on here is we can see instantly 2 VMs, 1 set of storage, and 1 network. So it's everything sat on the management network at the minute, within the EXXI server, not from the hosted VM workstation. Storage, so I've got a demo SSD of total should be 500 gig, but currently being used is 400 gig free. Obviously the operating system of the EXXI server is taking about 100 gig to install, so that's why we've already got a little bit used. So because these 2 VMs, I think they're both Ubuntu that I've previously installed, and literally we can just click on them and we should be away. These should be at the post. Oh no, so it's starting up now. So this is the process of just installing the VM at the minute. I've not actually built these through to the desktop, and these are in the process of building through an ISO store. I'll quickly show you that. There we go. Cool. So we can see there we've got our demonstration VMs. We can go to monitor. We can see the current usage of the 4 cores that I've got based on this EXXI server. So you can tell performance, memory, and any key events. Down here you've got a bit of a log. So if I go shutting down this VM, power off, you can see logs here. So you can see things populating about what's going on. And because we're the only user effective on this EXXI server, it should only be what we're doing. But if we're sharing this with as a data center, we'll be seeing things coming in all the time. Cool. So what we've got, there's a couple of key things I would show you was the auto start facility. Ooh, if we go VMs, it'll be clearer. So on here we've got both our VMs, and if I click on one of them and go auto start and then auto start later, so we can see here we've got an auto boot sequence. So effectively, if we turn on our EXXI server, as soon as the EXXI server is loaded, it will then start booting the subsequent VMs. So that's really good about. It's almost like if you were to lose all power and then restore it, at least then as soon as that's EXI server's on, it'll boot your system, and obviously you do it in whatever order you need to be doing that in. We can storage. Let's talk about the storage. So effectively, for having storage on EXI server, you can either have it stored on NAS or networked access storage, but it needs to be in the format of VMFS, which is the VMware file system. So it's its own sort of, it's like NTFS, but it's its own sort of clustered format. Okay, and within that, for it to appear on vSphere or EXI server as a valid storage, it needs to be over 132 gigabytes. So because the operating system is pretty heavy, and obviously we're going to be storing a lot of VMs on this. This can be migrated, but as a part of like a bit of a cluster, and you never know how many it's going to be had on. It needs to have subsequently quite a bit of storage. So that's why I've added 500 to this single hard drive. Single hard drived EXI server, but you can have multiple hard drives within that, and even set up RAID if you wanted to. So within this, I've got, let's have a quick, see if I go properties, browse. So I can see within this data store, I've currently got my files, which are for the 2 Ubuntu demo machines, and I've got my ISO store, which basically to build these out, it's ideal to dump all your ISOs within the same sort of data store, so it can use them a lot more quickly and effectively. These virtual machines are very similar to how you would use it on VMware Workstation, except we have to add things in. It's a little bit more technical because this is used for full data centers. So if I wanted to add an ISO or a virtual CD into these VMs, I'd have to go into CD-DVD drive, and then I can either add it from the physical host, which would be my laptop, or I can add it in from the data store ISO. So connect it, and then more options, browse the data store, and see what I wanted. Cool. So that's quick vSphere sort of looking, really. A lot of people don't have a sort of appreciation of what goes on in the background of virtualization and sort of client management and VM, but this is sort of the back end, really. So what we're going to do during the next set of practicals is not go straight into this level. We're going to be looking at VMware Workstation a little bit, look at the setup and build a VM from there, just a single VM, and then once we're sort of confident we can get that to desktop and it's exactly the same, then we're going to go straight onto building an EXI server, then deploying a couple of servers within that. So that's sort of what we've got here. We deploy the EXI server, access the GUI web front end, and then deploy our virtual machines on that EXI server. So this is what it's storing here. Cool. So that covers off the sort of vSphere walk around. Just some other little bits. So when we do subsequently have a lot more VMs running, we can see here we've got a cluster of VMs, so you can designate within a cluster more precise permissioning, so whether about memory, about network allocation, and basically instead of selecting each of these to go off, you can select the full cluster to turn off and turn on, so they can share that virtual memory. It's almost like having a data center but a business within a data center, so you can manage like a department within a company. So you might have your dev section here as a cluster, then your prod section, like your production, as another cluster, which is highly recommended, really. So what we're going to do is have a management client, which we can either build outside as a virtual machine, which we probably will, because I want to get away from this DHCP. I want to statically assign IP addresses to everything because we've already done networking, so we might as well use some of them skills. Have a management client, which is going to be a virtual client, and then we're going to have a logical switch, and then we're going to build an EXI server, and within our EXI server we're going to be hosting either Windows or whatever operating system we find, because at that point we start building our virtual environment, and then we can add whatever we want to it, and then we can expand it by having multiple EXI servers and bring in high availability. Cool. So next we're going to be getting practical. We're going to take a quick short break just to settle for that, and then I can continue. If there's any questions, just bring it up on chat, but thanks very much for watching.